Hey, good morning. You are listening to another episode of Black Man Into the Wild. I'm blessed to be here with you all today, and I'm blessed to have you here with me as well. This morning, we're going to be talking about supersonic jets. I came across this cool company, actually a startup out of Denver, Colorado, a couple of days ago that I want to talk about. But before we get started, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Like this video and share with your friends if you like what you hear. A couple of days ago, I came across this interesting company. It's a startup out of Denver, Colorado by the name of Boom Aerospace. Now, I'm a big fan of airplanes and the technology that goes into the propulsion and, everything that goes into making them fly. So this story caught my eye. This company, again, is called Boom. They have a mission to make the world dramatically more accessible. And they're going to be doing this by flying you anywhere in the world for less than $100 in less than 4 hours. Or at least that's what they claim. And this is coming after there's been no real advancement, no real progress in aviation over the last 50 years or so. And based on what I've looked into so far, it looks like the company will be rolling out their test model, the Boom XB1, later this year, with plans of having their commercial or their passenger airliner ready for flight in 2029. So right before the next decade. And they actually already have partnerships with the United States Air Force, who, is constantly looking for technological opportunities to disrupt the balance of their adversaries. Rolls-Royce, they're probably going to be doing some engineering and design work on the engines. Collins Aerospace, Japan Air, who they formed a strategic partnership with back in 2017. They're going to be helping refine the aircraft and design the passenger experience. And they actually also have an option to purchase up to 20 of the aircraft through a pre-order arrangement. And among others, Amazon Web Services, of course, because high-performance computing is the key to the next generation of supersonic aircraft design. And this is really where, the cost savings in research and development come into play. No more wind tunnels for engine testing. They can now use advanced computer modeling to design and perfect the most efficient engines. Let's go ahead and get into it. Now, this article is coming from spectrum.org, published January 2021, and it's titled Boom Supersonic's XB1 Test Aircraft Promises a New Era of Faster-Than-Sound Travel. The prototype of a planned 65-seat airliner will fly in 2021. It goes on. The Concorde, the world's first supersonic airliner, landed for the last time 17 years ago. It was a beautiful feat of engineering, but it never turned a profit. So why should we believe that Boom Supersonic can do better now? Blake Skoll, the founder and chief executive, turns the question on its head. How could it not do better? The Concorde was designed in the 1960s using slide rules and wind tunnels, whereas Boom Supersonic's planned airliner, the Overture, is being modeled in software and built out of ultralight materials using super efficient jet engines. That should reduce the consumption of fuel per passenger mile well below the Concorde's gluttonous rate, low enough to make possible fares no pricier than today's business class. Now, for those who aren't familiar, the Concorde was a supersonic jet commissioned by the French and British governments back in, I believe, 1976. It was a passenger airliner. I believe it could carry up to 125 passengers. And it had a maximum speed of twice the speed of sound, roughly 1,400 miles per hour. Now, unfortunately, the plane was retired in 2003, 3 years after the crash of Air France Flight 4590, in which all passengers and crew were killed. And the article goes on. In October, Boom rolled out a 1/3 scale model of the Overture called the XB-1, the point of which is to prove the design principles, cockpit ergonomics, flight envelope, even the experience of flight itself. The first flight will take place in the near future over the Mojave Desert, says Skoll. There's just one seat, which means that the experience will be the pilots alone. The Overture, with 65 seats, is slated to fly in 2026. And allowing for the time it takes to certify it with regulators, it is planned for a commercial flight by 2029. So hopefully we're rolling into the next decade, or I should say flying into the next decade, in some pretty advanced aircraft here. That would be pretty awesome. It goes on. The XB-1 is slender and sleek, with swept-back delta wings and 3 jet engines, 2 slung under the wings and a 3rd in the tail. These are conventional jet engines coupled to afterburners, thrust-enhancing fuel-sucking devices that were used by the Concorde, contributing to its high cost of operation. But the future airliner will use advanced turbofan engines that won't need afterburners. Another difference from yesteryear is in the liberal use of virtual views of the aircraft's surroundings. The Concorde, optimized as it was for speed, was awkward during takeoff and landing, when the wings had to be angled upward to provide sufficient lift at low speeds. To make sure the pilot had a good view of the runway, the plane thus needed a dropping nose, which was lowered at these times. But the XB-1 can keep a straight face because it relies instead on cameras and cockpit monitors to make the ground visible. So that's going to be some pretty dramatic advancements in the cockpit there for the pilots to be able to see taking off, landing, and all the good stuff there. To speed the design process, the engineers had recourse not only to computer modeling but also to 3D printing, which lets them prototype a part in hours, revise it, and reprint it. Boom uses parts made by Stratasys, an additive manufacturing company which uses a new laser system from Velo 3D to fuse titanium powder into objects with intricate internal channels, both to save weight and allow the passage of cooling air. Perhaps Skoll's most debatable claim is that there's a big potential market for Mach Plus travel out there. If speed were really such a selling point, why have commercial airliners actually slowed down? I don't know. It's not that today's planes are pokier. Even now, a pilot will routinely make up lost time simply by opening the throttle. No, today's measured pace is a business decision. Interesting, but makes sense. Skoll insists there's a good amount of people out there that have a genuine need for speed. He cites internal market surveys suggesting that most business travelers would buy a supersonic flight at roughly the same price as business class. Interesting. And it goes on, it finishes up here. Boom's flights will be between coastal cities because overwater routes inflict no supersonic boom on anyone except the fish. So we're talking about a niche within a niche. Still, overwater flight is a big and profitable slice of the pie. And it's precisely on such long routes that speed matters the most. So yeah, 2030. Now that was a fun article. What do I think? I think that, first they're gonna need to complete, many successful test flights of their XB-1 test model, while they continue to raise capital to fund the Overture, which is their planned commercial jet. There's competition out there. I'm sure you all are familiar with Virgin Galactic. They actually just recently completed a test flight of one of their commercial space tourism aircrafts. So definitely keep an eye out on them. And I'll probably, circle back and talk about that more in depth as well, because, that's That's quite an amazing feat. Richard Branson, longtime billionaire. These are his space efforts. And then there's another company out there called Spike Aerospace. They don't have anything tangible yet that they are, preparing to put in the sky for a test flight anytime soon, or at least that I've seen. But again, in the similar space of supersonic air travel, I would keep an eye out on them, in the near to midterm future. That was just a fun article. There are some other things, in this similar space that I will definitely, come back and talk about more in depth, whether or not it's the Hyperloop, whether or not it's eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. There's a lot of disruptive technologies in this space of travel, getting from point A to point B. And, as this article mentioned, with the time horizon being about 10 years out for, commercial utilization, realistically, 2030 really isn't that far away. In my eyes, it's right around the corner. So I'm definitely keeping an eye out, and I'm excited to see what the future has to hold. But yeah, thanks for listening this morning. Just a fun article that I came across a couple of days ago. This has been Black Men Into the Wild. Have a good morning.